Mercado is out with a toe injury. Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford will likely be a game-time decision with his bad thumb. He missed practice all week. Rams play at Green Bay Sunday on Fox TV. Texans running back Dameon Pierce is out with an ankle injury, and Houston wideout Robert Woods is out, foot injury. Texans will host Tampa Bay. Steelers linebacker Cole Holcomb is reportedly out for the year after last night's knee injury. He'll have surgery. Falcons wide receiver Drake London is out with a groin injury. As for college football, we've got 2 games tonight, including Boston College at Syracuse, 7 NBA games this evening. I'm Steve DeSager.
It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interviews.
There's going to be much higher expectations, sense of awareness of what we bring to the table.
Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Throws, answer, yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Full Court Press second hour. Jason Walker here, Eric Frandsen absent for the moment. You'll hear from him later this hour. Me and Eric got together, pre-recorded some analysis of the high school football games that'll be taking place later tonight. Ridgeline taking on Payson, Green Canyon and Skyview going up against each other in Smithfield. You got a Region 11 rematch. Last time those two teams played, Skyview won 21-7. Bit of a lower scoring game by their standard. Kind of a higher scoring game by Green Canyon standard. Overall, obviously they don't average 7 points themselves, but both teams combining for 28, close to 30 points. That's not super typical for Green Canyon games. But we have the analysis later this hour, and our show will be shorter because of that Skyview Green Canyon game, because you'll be able to hear that on the Fan. You'll also be able to hear it on Light FM 100 FM. So you'll be able to hear those. I believe we'll also be streaming video, CashValleyDaily.com. John Newbold, Rex Davis with the call there. And Nick Zollinger, Dave Simmons calling the other game, Ridgeline, as both teams trying to advance to the semifinals of the 4A playoffs. That'll be played down at University of Utah. Like I said, that analysis later. We've already had a lot of time to talk about Utah State sports, the big weekend for them. Haven't touched on Utah State football as much. Won't be doing that a whole lot today. At least I don't plan to. If you guys want to text in, if you want to talk about it, feel free to text in 435-339-0321. But, we've got men's basketball tonight, volleyball, soccer tomorrow in the early afternoon, soccer at noon, volleyball at 1, football at 5. That's a packed weekend of Aggie sports. Doesn't get much more full than that. And 2 of those games, the volleyball and soccer, have Mountain West Championship implications. Soccer's the championship game, and Utah State volleyball has a chance to clinch at least a share of the Mountain West title with the win on Saturday against New Mexico, who currently sits in second place in the conference. A whole 3 games behind the Aggies at the moment. So pretty intense there. Want to talk about the Utah Jazz. They were in action last night. It was the second end of a back-to-back for the Jazz. In the first end of the back-to-back, it was a home back-to-back. 2-game homestand for the Jazz. In that first game, they beat the Grizzlies pretty soundly, 133-109. It kept the Grizzlies winless, and the Grizzlies are still winless. 0-5. The Jazz are now 2-4 after they lost to the Orlando Magic last night. They lost 115-113. Taylor Horton-Tucker missing a 3-point attempt with about 4 seconds left would have given the Jazz the lead. The Jazz had a 113-112 lead. it would have given. Let's see, the 3-pointer would have put the Jazz up 116 to 114. There was a take foul, and the Magic made one of two free throws, so it ended up being 115 to 113. But the Jazz had that 113-112 lead, but I believe it was Paolo Banchero who made a really wild layup at the end of this like 14 seconds, I think. Yeah, it's Paolo Banchero, just really wild. He was guarded by John Collins, drives. Collins sticks in front of him, does a wonderful job to not foul him, but he just kind of puts this wild, left-handed layup up, and it manages to roll around the rim and in. Jazz play out their possession, but it's for some reason Taylor Horton-Tucker is the one who ended up taking the shot. Now, mind you, I don't blame him for taking that shot. He was wide as heck open. So, and there was, like I said, when he caught the ball, there's like 6 seconds left. You're wide open from three. I know the dude's only making, 30% of his threes this season and is a career 28%. But you know what? You're wide open. There's 6 seconds left. I don't necessarily blame Horton-Tucker for taking that shot in the moment, but I'm just frustrated that that's where the play had to end up. And maybe they left him wide open for a reason. It's like, hey, this guy shoots 28% for his career. We'll leave this guy wide open. But when you get down to it, there wasn't much more time for him to create a better shot or pass to somebody who was more wide open. Jordan Clarkson actually passed him. He was trying to find some room. I would have liked them to get it to Lauri Markkanen because he'd made 2 clutch threes to drag the Jazz back, into the game because they were trailing by several points with, under 2 minutes to play. But the Jazz were able to crawl back into it. Lauri Markkanen hits 2 clutch threes, one of which put the Jazz ahead. And they don't manage to draw up a play that gets Lauri Markkanen an open shot. Disappointing. Disappointing they couldn't make. Disappointing Taylor Horton-Tucker couldn't make his shot. Was the second end of a back-to-back, but these are the games that can help you out so much when you're trying to, get ahead. You talk about these being scheduled losses. Second end of a back-to-back. Even though it's at home, I don't think this counts as a schedule loss. I know it is. It would have been the third game in 4 days, third game in 5 days. It's not even that bad because it's not the 4 game in 5 days. It's just a back-to-back. But the Jazz had a chance to win. They had a chance to get the win in the second end of a back-to-back. It's hard to get those. You're at a disadvantage, but you're at home, so that brings some of the advantage back. I really feel like they should have won this game. They had that chance to win, and they dropped it. And it's really disappointing because now the Jazz go into a really tough stretch. It's a 4-game road trip. And they're going to be spending a lot of time in the more eastern half of the U.S. They do have 2 Western Conference games. They'll face, but it's the Minnesota Timberwolves and Memphis Grizzlies. That's why I say eastern part of the U.S. The other 2 games, Chicago Bulls, Indiana Pacers. So they're going to be basically spending all their time in the Midwest, in that kind of, Midwest section of the U.S. So 4-game road trip, you're not coming back to Utah, at least for a game, until November 14th. I don't know if they're going to spend any time at home. But from November 4th to November 10th, basically a week, they're going to be on the road. And these are going to be, not super easy. Memphis right now, they're winless, and that may be like the one game where you think, okay, maybe they can get a chance. But it'll be the end of the road trip when they're potentially their most exhausted, most homesick, most willing to just get this thing over with. But they got to take on the Timberwolves, the Bulls, and the Pacers, and the Grizzlies. And I think, just in a vacuum, any one of these 4 games is winnable. The exception maybe being the Timberwolves because they're playing pretty well right now from what I've been following of them. Well, I guess they're 2-2. I know their defense has been playing well. They have 2 dominant wins and then 2 losses. It's kind of weird because they have 2 dominant wins. It's the Miami Heat and Denver Nuggets, 2 playoff teams. And they lost by 3 to the Raptors and lost to the Hawks, who were, they've been mediocre the last few seasons. I don't know if the Hawks are suddenly going to jump up. They're doing okay now, but I don't know. The Timberwolves, they got, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards. They're stacked with some, kind of those underrated talents of the NBA. Rudy Gobert, big underrated guy. Karl Anthony Towns, one of the most talented offensive centers in the league. In a league that includes guys like Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns offensively is up there in his ability. But he never really gets talked about, partly because he's on a Timberwolves team that's never done anything. Then you got Anthony Edwards, a guy who feels like he's been an up-and-coming star for a few seasons. So the Timberwolves trying to make a breakout. We'll see how the Jazz go up against them. But so the hardest game probably of the road trip is probably the first one. But it's going to be really interesting to see how the Jazz, manage this. You'd hope they go at least 2-2, and I think they can. But they're also winless on the road, and their 2 road games, Suns and Nuggets, not super impressive. So we'll see that their home games have been all right. I mean, you look, their one home game they didn't play super well in was the Kings. But they win against the Clippers. They beat down the Grizzlies, narrowly lose to the Magic. Second end of a back-to-back. So they've played well at home. On the road, it's been a little iffy. So we'll get our first idea of the Jazz and really, I guess, more data on how well the Jazz do on the road. Our first glimpse of them on the road was Suns and Nuggets. But one thing is that when we look at the end of this road trip, the Grizzlies, that game is the first game the Jazz will play that's the in-season tournament. Now, the first actual in-game tournament games, or in-season tournament, they need a... I think I heard the trophy is called the NBA Cup, and they need to just call this the NBA Cup. Because in-season tournament is way too many syllables. But the November 10th game against the Grizzlies, that's the first in-season tournament game for the Jazz, and I was trying to spit out earlier. The first in-season tournament for anybody in the NBA begins tonight. So we'll get our first glimpse there. We'll see the Memphis Grizzlies court, which isn't a complete eyesore. The Jazz will have their first home in-season tournament game when they return home. That November 14th return to action game, they'll actually get a 3-day break. They'll get the 11th, 12th, and 13th off after their 4-game road trip. And then they'll play the Portland Trailblazers at home. That's the first time you'll see that 90% purple court. I don't know if I'll watch that game. We'll see. But the thing that I thought was interesting about the in-season tournament, and the reason that I point that out and begin to talk about it, is that there was a suggestion earlier today. It was reported, I saw from NBA Central on Twitter, but I believe it was from Yahoo Sports, where apparently Tyrese Halliburton, point guard for the Indiana Pacers, he's an up-and-coming star. He brought up the suggestion. I don't know if he's the first, but this is the first time I've seen somebody suggest this, or at least first time I remember. Maybe somebody said it and I forgot about it. But he suggested that the team to win the in-season tournament should get an automatic playoff bid, which, a lot of times when I've seen suggestions, out there suggestions for things like all-star games and whatnot, my first thought is usually, oh, that's a dumb idea. It's way too out there. It's way too gimmicky. But when I saw this, my first reaction was, oh, that's not a bad idea. I think you could make it work. Because when people talk about the All-Star game and they say the winner of that, like East versus West, the winning team, the team from their conference gets home court for the playoffs. That's just too gimmicky, and partly because a lot of the players aren't going to care. But in this one, I feel like it's an incentive that you can make work, and it's not too disruptive. Because I think you could find a way to make it, somebody would obviously be upset if they got bumped from the playoffs because a below 500 team managed to fluke their way into an in-season tournament win. But I think it provides some nice incentive. Now, mind you, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, that's not a bad idea. Maybe let's play with the idea. Think it through. What are the positives, negatives, implications? What are ways that we can refine this? Because one of the first things I thought of was, the team that wins the in-season tournament is probably going to go to the playoffs anyway. So does that even matter? Is there maybe more of an incentive we can give? And one of the ideas I actually had ended up being tweeted out by Rob Perez. Now, I didn't have this specific framework. My thought was just, if they already make the playoffs, maybe give them home court. But here's something that Rob Perez suggested, where he said if the winner finishes outside the top 10 in their conference, they would be guaranteed a 10 seed in the play-in tournament. So you bump out the 10 seed, winner of the in-season tournament gets into the play-in. If the winner finishes inside the top 10 in the conference, they get guaranteed a home court advantage in every series or play-in game they qualify for. So, even if you're like a 7 or 6 seed, you would get home court advantage. I know some people would scream unfair, but I don't think that would be horrible. I think that's something that it's enough of an incentive that, especially if you're it might have implications later in the season where maybe the team that wins the, in-conference tournament decides to, rest their guys and tank a little bit to where maybe they get a lower seed, but they know they get home court. That's a potential implication of this. But I don't think it's an awful idea. And maybe you could play with it. I don't know. What do you guys think? It's an idea that I didn't think it was terrible. I thought there's at least potential there to where maybe you could do something with it. So, because that is part of the thing with the in-season tournament. I know there's already going to be competitiveness with these guys, and they're going to like the idea of winning an in-season tournament. Maybe they give a little bit more. But if you can find something like this, where it's an incentive, but it's not too disruptive. And I have a feeling that they won't want to go this direction because they already got rid of the division winners getting automatic. Because it used to be if you won your division, you would get minimum top 4 seed. But they got rid of that. So I don't know if they'd like this, but I think it's an idea you can work with, and at least they should talk about it. 1570 texting in, you can't load manage anymore without getting fined, so they wouldn't be able to tank at the end of the season by resting players. That is a good point. If they are able to implement these rules correctly, it would make it harder for a team to tank and try and take advantage of having won the in-season tournament. So that's what I say. I feel like it's possible. Now, usually the longer you think about these, the more potential problems you can find, and I haven't gone through the whole thought process and potential cause and effects. That tanking thing is the first season I thought of, and if the NBA is doing their job, they should be able to mitigate that happening. But we'll see. So that's just about going to wrap it up for live Jason Walker here. We are going to be continuing the show. We'll be heading to a break in just a moment. You'll hear me and Eric Frandsen previewing high school football, Mountain West football over the weekend. And on Monday, we'll recap everything. Volleyball, soccer, football, basketball. It'll be a heck of a reaction Monday. Keep tuned. You'll hear from me and Eric next on the Full Court Press.
Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker, the voice of Eric Frandsen. As I know you've been going on and on without me, but I'm back. I'm here again. So
I'm sure I'm surviving,
yes.
or I'm in an absolute panic. Well, technically, what I am right now is probably heading to the Utah State basketball game. That's probably what I am right now.
In real time, yes. So yes, this segment done a little bit beforehand, but for obvious reasons. But I've had to run down to St. George. You've got the basketball game. We got high school football games going on. So there's a lot that's going on a Friday night here in Cache Valley. But what we wanted to do on this last segment of the show is to talk a little bit more about these 4A football playoffs. And since we're talking football, we'll do a look ahead to what's going on in the Mountain West Conference because there's a game tonight in the Mountain West. So some juicy matchups throughout the conference besides just Utah State at San Diego State.
Is Utah State versus San Diego State a juicy matchup this week?
Yes, it is.
I feel like
it's a pillow fight. So somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose.
I don't know. This might not even be the biggest pillow fight in this week. So like, it's not the best. It's not the worst. It's just kind of there.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it is teams that are ranked 10th and 11th in conference play. So, but you do have the last place team going up against, I think, number 9 or something like that.
Yeah, Hawaii and Nevada face each other. They're 2-7 versus 2-6.
So only slightly more impressive, slightly less impressive, I should say, than Utah State, San Diego State pair of 3 and 5 teams going up against each other.
But before we get into Mountain West Conference pillow fights of the weekend, because there are some other ones that could be kind of interesting. We want to focus on Region 11 high school football. We've got 3 teams still in action in the 4A football playoffs. Sadly, 2 of them face each other, so it's impossible for 3 teams to advance. But let's focus on that one that's a rematch. That's number 1 Skyview versus number 8 Green Canyon. Green Canyon defense just continues to be solid all season long. Salem Hills went up against that Green Canyon defense last week, and they've had kind of an up and down season. Salem Hills had with some games they'd score in the 40s and some games they'd be in the teens. So they're kind of a hard team to predict offensively. But Green Canyon has been very consistent with its defense, and it holds them to only 3 all game. And the last time Green Canyon and Skyview faced each other, Green Canyon forced Skyview into its lowest scoring output of the season. Unfortunately, it was still 21 points for the Bobcats, and they took care of business.
Well, in that game, Green Canyon's defense did a job. You hold Skyview to 21 points, your defense has done a job. Unfortunately, that offense, all season has really struggled, and that's been the weakness of Green Canyon, is being able to get enough points to take advantage of its good defense. I mean, the games where they're often winning, when you see that 12-3, that's often how they're able to win. The offense doesn't do much, but the defense just suffocates a team entirely. And you're not going to suffocate Skyview. You'll limit them. Hold them to, as you said, their lowest point total of the season. And you look at, Brevin Egbert, a guy who's routinely going for 200 yards rushing, usually 200-plus yards from scrimmage. Yeah, his lowest yardage output of the season of only 104 yards.
I know. I saw that. Green Canyon did such a great job defensively. They held Skyview's running back to only just north of 100 yards rushing.
Yeah, and only 5.2 yards per carry. Again, that's his lowest. That tells you how good Brevin Egbert has been. He's on the eve of 2,000 rushing yards on the season. So, if you get that again, if you hold Skyview to 21 points, again, the defense would have done its job, but this is where the offense needs to step up. Talk about defense winning championships, and I usually have my add on that offense will get you to those championships. So this is where the offense is going to have to step up. They've had some games where they began to get a few more points. This is going to have to be one of those. And Skyview's been vulnerable on defense at times. They've given up points. They're not a bad defense, but they've had some teams that have been able to score on them. So if Green Canyon can get their offense going, they've got some playmakers on that team. They just need to be able to take advantage of them. Maybe the defense gives them a couple of short fields. That'd be big, turnovers. So if they're able to do that, there's the key for a Green Canyon victory. But, if you're Skyview, I guess it's get 28 points and you probably won this game.
Skyview, interesting here, just kind of looking at the season as a whole, is Skyview has consistently been the most electric offense in 4A. I mean, they're scoring more than anybody else. Well, I guess with the exception of Crimson Cliffs, they've come along and they're actually scoring a lot more as the season has gone on. Skyview started as the most prolific offense, and Crimson Cliffs has kind of surpassed them.
Yeah, Skyview had to play a lot more better defenses.
And that is a big key there. But Skyview averaging about 41 points a game on offense. Green Canyon giving up just under 11 points on defense. So this is strength versus strength. But the Skyview, not a bad defensive team in their own right. So we like to talk about the offense for the Bobcats, but they've had a pretty solid defense as well. And part of that is you get up on a team so much, they have to kind of change their game plan and get uncomfortable to try to catch up to you. But Skyview has been a pretty balanced team offensively and defensively. Green Canyon has been great on defense and has had some struggles on offense. They've had a few games where they discovered it, but you talked about this earlier in the week. What do we really know about Green Canyon offensively? Because the two games where they had offensive explosions were against teams that did not have good defenses. So this Green Canyon has got to find a way this week or tonight to get that offense rolling, to give them a chance. I don't think they can rely on defense alone if they want to knock off the Bobcats tonight.
Yeah, the only way you get, a win without the offense is kind of like that Bears versus Cardinals playoff game way back in 2006. They are who we thought they were, post-game rant but that's because they got 2 special teams touchdowns, a bunch of turnovers. I don't think the offense scored a single point, and they had a 20-something point comeback. So unless you're getting that from your defense and special teams where they're putting up the points for the offense, we actually have had games like that for Green Canyon this year.
Yes.
Where they got a couple of pick sixes, and that powered them to a win. So unless that happens, that is an obvious exception. Unless we see that, then Green Canyon absolutely will have to get points on offense. And the defense can help. Turnovers will be big. Putting the offense in the easiest spots possible. But at some point, the offense does have to, carry its own water. It's got to be able to pull its own weight and help the team win a game, have a balanced team. So you look at Skyview, they do have an elite offense, but their defense is certainly helping. You look at region play, they hold a quality Ridgeline team to 22 points, hold Logan to 18, Green Canyon to 7, Mountain Crest to 14, and then in a rematch against Bear River, they held them to 21. In the previous one, they held them to 34. So that was kind of like their one, bad defensive game in region play. So they were stepping it up in region play on defense. So it's like elite offense, good defense. Green Canyon is elite defense, mediocre, below average offense. And that's kind of where you're worried about this, and that's what happened in the last game. Green Canyon, played Skyview's offense to what you might call a draw. Hold them to 21 points, well below their average, but you're not suffocating them. Play to a draw. But the offense puts up 7 points. That's not going to get it done.
Which only came, later in the game.
Yeah, so you need that offense to be getting things going. Keep a pace with Skyview, or at least stay within striking distance, because that can be the key for a good defensive team. Stay within striking distance, and they didn't, when they were down 21 points to Skyview for a good chunk of that game.
Green Canyon last week, they had a kickoff return for a touchdown. As we've said, they've had a few defensive touchdowns that they've been able to do. They're going to need to have some more magic like that, where it's non-offensive, not necessarily all points. Points don't necessarily need to all come from special teams or returns or pick sixes or fumble recoveries for touchdowns. But they need to be able to put the offense in positions where it's easier for them to score.
Yeah, you can see games like that. I remember it was a game with the Patriots when Tom Brady was suspended. They had Jacoby Brissett starting at quarterback. They win the game 27-0. And it was 95% defense and special teams. I don't remember if the special teams or defense scored. They might have. I know Brissett had a couple of rushing touchdowns in that game, but like I said, putting the offense in good positions. It was an offense that suddenly didn't have a Hall of Famer at quarterback. But they won that game because the defense and special teams were constantly putting the offense in the easiest possible spots.
Right, rather than having to go 80 yards to find the end zone, you only have to go 30 or 35.
Yeah, and then also, good punting and coverage to pin the other team deep. So a lot of different ways you can win a football game, and a lot of ways you can make it easier on your offense. But, like you said, at the end of the day, the offense got to do something.
And we'll hear that game here tonight, here on The Fan, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, streaming on CashValleyDaily.com with video. Hurricane Rex. Wow. Hurricane John Newbold will be on the call along with Rex Davis. But it'll also be on 100.9 Light FM. A brief interruption to the Christmas music going on, which bothers Jason. But nonetheless, we'll still have the broadcast there.
100 Light FM is going to mysteriously shut down a lot during November. And I will not have an explanation for it. Thank you very much.
Until Christmas or Thanksgiving, and it magically is
then the shutdowns won't happen anymore. I'll be like, hey, this is working great now, isn't it, Eric?
Yeah, so great to see these teams square off. There's a good rivalry between them. I prefer to see Region 11 teams not have to face each other in the playoffs until late in the playoffs. But
yeah,
I guess we're in the quarterfinals, but still, I'd rather semifinals or championship.
Yeah, you'd think it'd run into the semi, but the fact that we've already had Skyview facing Bear River, Skyview against Green Canyon. Skyview can't get rid of Region 11 teams. They faced them every week since September 1st.
Yeah, how will they fare against somebody they're not intimately familiar with? That's the question.
Yeah.
So that game going on tonight in Smithfield, and we'll have it here on The Fan. The other game going on involving a Region 11 team is the Ridgeline Riverhawks taking on Ridgeline is number 6, and rather than making a trip down to number 3 Provo, who if things went chalk, that's where they'd be. But tonight they're in Millville, and they get to host number 14 Payson, who talk about defensive scores and flipping everything on its ear. That's what Payson did last week at Provo, with 20 points in the fourth quarter on a pick six, a fumble recovery for a touchdown. They had defensive scores that totally flipped the script for them to get that upset last week, and they're going to try to do that again tonight.
Well, as I've said for a while, turnovers drive upsets. You get turnovers, you get upsets. That's how you get a 14 seed beating a 3 seed. Get those turnovers and just getting points straight off the turnovers. Don't even put the offense on the field. Just put the points on the field instead of the offense, or points on the scoreboard instead of the offense on the field. So we'll see if that magic carries again. It can be pretty hard to keep up that momentum, but teams can. Teams have done it. Teams have managed to, keep that momentum going, make long surprise runs. I know people need situations where it's suddenly, you're facing a really low seed when you're expecting to face a high seed, and you start licking your chops, and then suddenly you're the next team sent home by that upstart team. Happens all the time in March Madness. So Ridgeline has to be on its toes. Don't give up those turnovers. Play effective football, and you'll come away with a win and might be able to show that, you are better than the 14 seed. So, but make sure you play like that. Otherwise, you end up like Provo, sent home a little too early. Yeah,
Ridgeline has to treat this Payson team as a very dangerous team. Don't look at their RPI rank. Don't necessarily look at their overall record. You have to look at this team as a very dangerous team that has played themselves into the quarterfinals and has clearly shown they're not going to give up. Regardless what the score says, or regardless what the time is on the clock, they're going to keep fighting, and Ridgeline has to treat them as a very dangerous opponent.
Yeah, you got to treat them like the best team you've faced in the playoffs so far. You're in the quarterfinals, your opponent is the best you've faced so far. So treat them like it. Yeah, there's a number next to their name, but they're in the quarterfinals, same as you. They are in their spot, same as you.
Yeah, it was interesting what happened last week with Ridgeline and Stansbury. And the first time they met, it was a very close game, a 1-point game in favor of Ridgeline. And in the second meeting, boy, there was nothing close to that. Ridgeline just put the hammer down and sent a message that, look, we're a solid team, we're a deep team, we're a very talented team, and that's the message to our team and to our fans and to anybody else that's paying attention, that we intend to go deep into these playoffs.
Yeah, it's a great sign for mentality, because you have a close game and you get a win, you think, okay, we're better than these guys, then we can keep it up. We beat them last time, we'll beat them again. They didn't have that mentality. They had last time was way too close, and we were better than you, and that's not going to happen again. And they lay the beat down. And so that's a really good sign that these guys are taking this seriously. They're not just walking here saying, we beat you last time, we'll do it again. It's like, no, we will beat you down. We will prove we are definitely the better team. And that same mentality, if it carries over, will serve them very well in this game tonight.
Yeah, playoff mentality for Ridgeline. So a team that's averaging about 34 points a game, giving up 23. Payson averaging about 30 points a game, giving up 21. So Ridgeline and Payson will be squaring off on our sister station, 104.5 The Ranch. It'll be Dave Simmons and the Patriot, Nick Zollinger, on the call. Also video streaming on CashValleyDaily.com. Now, not to look too far ahead, but if Ridgeline wins, they will face the winner of Crimson Cliffs and Desert Hills.
Yeah, that's another matchup that's got double-digit seeds still hanging around.
Yes, so a couple different upsets going on into the quarterfinals. If Skyview wins, they will face the winner of Park City and Timpanogos, which is number 4 versus number 5. So we'll hope that Ridgeline advances, and we'll see what happens between Skyview and Green Canyon. But regardless, there will be a Region 11 representative, no matter what, in the semifinals at the University of Utah on, what would be that, November 9th is what they are saying. But the winner of the Skyview Green Canyon game will be on November 9th. And if Ridgeline were able to advance, they will play on November 10th. So they're staggering those games.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know if they've ever done that before. I guess since they're probably playing a lot of games between 5A, and 5A, and 6A, I think that's what they're doing.
Probably.
I haven't double-checked.
So just to wrap things up, before we hand it off to Hurricane John Newbold, quickly, just a couple of games in the Mountain West. There's one tonight, Colorado State at Wyoming. Wyoming, kind of an embarrassing game last week against Boise, trying to rebound. Meanwhile, Colorado State, and this is a border war here. This is a rivalry game. 6 o'clock tonight on CBS Sports Network. And then a host of games throughout the day on Saturday. Air Force is out of conference. They're playing Army. That'll be on CBS Sports Network at 12:30. We talked about the pillow fight of the week, and that's Hawaii at Nevada. Though I think Nevada is trending in the right direction.
Yeah, Nevada, they
Hawaii
lost 16 straight games, and they're on a 2-game win streak. So,
golf clap. Oddly enough, no national television for that game. two win teams squaring off. 4, it's UNLV at New Mexico. UNLV's favored by 10. In this one.
Yeah, I think they should be. New Mexico's not doing so well. UNLV, I think they did lose to Fresno State, but I think they proved that they're not some fluke product of a poor schedule. They're at least a solid team.
Yeah, they're pretty solid. Aggies, obviously, at 5 o'clock against San Diego State. And then at 8 o'clock, Boise State at Fresno State. This one could be really interesting. Has Boise State figured a few things out? Fresno State, they're still pretty solid. It's on CBS Sports Network, 8 o'clock kick. And both teams are 3-1 in conference play, so big implications here as to who's going to be in the driver's seat of potentially getting to that conference title game.
Yeah, Fresno State obviously beating UNLV, big test for them, and they passed it with pretty much flying colors. But yeah, Boise State. There are a lot of people speaking to the demise of Boise State, and I look at last year where their demise was greatly exaggerated, and this year could be the same. We'll find out more after this game against Fresno State, but yeah, Boise State not dead yet, and so the winner of this game will be in the driver's seat to join Air Force in the conference championship game.
Fresno is favored by 3, and again, that'll be 8 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. So clearly we're going to be paying attention to the Aggie game, but as that game is concluding, be keeping a definite close eye on that game in Fresno later in the evening. So interesting schedule of games throughout the Mountain West Conference. Really, you only have one game that looks like it's a good team against a bad team. All the others are kind of somewhat evenly matched, or it's a rivalry game.
So there should be a bunch of interesting games, hopefully a bunch of close scores.
Yes.
That's what we always like to see in the Mountain West.
Hey, that's going to do it for us tonight here in the Full Court Press. We're going to be handing things off to Hurricane John Newbold and Rex Davis. Big Region 11 showdown, Skyview versus Green Canyon in the 4A football playoffs in the quarterfinals. Full play-by-play coverage here on The Fan, but you can also watch it on CashValleyDaily.com.